For a generation, the Catskills was the premier vacation spot for millions of New Yorkers, until the Borscht Belt took an economic tailspin. But now, there's new life on the horizon. A new gambling casino has risen from the ashes.
Now, from 42nd and 2nd, this is Pix 11 News Closeup with Marvin Scott.
Good morning, everyone. The Catskills, better known as the Borscht Belt. It was like summer camp for a generation of New Yorkers looking to escape the stifling city heat in those days before air conditioning. With hundreds of hotels and bungalow colonies, it became the premier vacation destination, conveniently located just 90 miles north of the city. But times, they changed, and so did vacation habits. Hotels closed. The region went into an economic tailspin. The only hope for the future, said the locals, was gambling. Well, their wish finally came true when the legislature gave its blessings to casino gambling. And now, with a new casino open there is hope for a rebirth of the Catskills. From the dancing and the tumbling to the ka-chingling, the Catskills is gambling on its future, hoping to turn borscht into champagne and restore the glitter to the once thriving resort known as the Borscht Belt. A behemoth of a casino has now risen from the ashes of hundreds of hotels that were a summer refuge for tens of thousands of New Yorkers.
In 1953, the New York Times reported there were 538 hotels in the Catskills, in addition to 1,000 boarding houses and 50,000 bungalows.
Sullivan County historian John Conway says they're all gone now. Some have long closed, some have fallen into default, some have burned to the ground.
It's sad when you drive around and you realize, it's never going to be again, no matter what they do. Not coming back.
It's like traveling through a time warp, seeing what remains of these grand hotels today. The 400-room Pines Hotel, for example, was a classic resort that lasted longer than most of its contemporaries. Today, it sits abandoned, an eyesore with shattered windows and overgrowth surrounding its decaying buildings. Grossinger's, a favorite of A-list celebrities, is long gone. The pristine Hayden Hotel burned to the ground, but its image is preserved in the film Sweet Lorraine.
The Lorraine!
It's exactly the way I remember it.
Kutchers Hotel and Country Club outlasted them all. With 440 rooms, it was a magnificent hotel that was the inspiration for the classic movie Dirty Dancing, which was actually filmed in North Carolina.
So we take each other's hand.
Quite a different style of dancing. But in its heyday, this was the daily routine around the pool. This is all that is left of the once grand Kutchers Hotel and Country Club. But elsewhere on the property has risen a $250 million yoga center and spa for wealthy New Yorkers. This is part of the Catskills Rebirth. That may help restore life to the hamlet of South Fallsburg. With many businesses shuttered, it looks more like a town out of poverty-stricken Appalachia. The Raleigh Hotel, where I spent my college summers working as a bellhop.
Well, let's see. Judging by the weight, you must be here for, about 3 days?
It's still there. The Raleigh is now an Orthodox Jewish property. This once was the entrance to the magnificent Concord Hotel, the old Concord Hotel. The Concord was the crown jewel of the Catskills, with 1,200 rooms, multiple pools, and a monster golf course. When it closed, it threw the Catskills into an economic tailspin.
We lost the Concord Resort. We lost a lot of the big hotels, the Grossingers. With that, you lost employees who supported these villages.
There was somewhat of a prophecy in the words I used to conclude a report, which I did on the Catskills back in 1972. That post, which pointed to the remnants of the 538 hotels that once flourished in this area, well, that's gone now. But the one thing I said in the report was,
But there's still hope that the Catskills will bounce back as a major tourist center. Much of that hope is pinned on the belief that sooner or later, the New York State Legislature will approve casino gambling.
Everything very high-end, very elegant.
It took 4 decades for that to happen. Area residents are now betting on the $1.5 billion Resorts World Casino, built on the old Concord property to revitalize the area.
We're recreating the middle class with our jobs. We have 1,500 new jobs, escalating to 2,000 in this building. We're basically putting paychecks in people's pocket, and they're spending it in the community.
If it brings more people just to gamble, it's going to bring more people to feed them and house them, and so it should bring some growth to the area.
I love it. I love gambling, so it's a good thing for me. It's a bad thing for me, actually, but I'm here and I'm spending my money and I'm paying some salaries, so hello.
This is a first-class 332-room hotel and casino with more than 2,100 slot machines and over 150 Las Vegas-style table games. There's a private room with butler service for high rollers who wish to place bets as high as $10,000. And the super big spenders, they get to stay in a luxurious 2-story, 2-bedroom villa with a unique amenity. If you don't get a royal flush at the table, you certainly will with this $8,000 toilet. With many casinos accessible in the region and bankrupt hotels in Atlantic City, what's different about this casino? And will it succeed?
I think we're different. I think we're close enough to the city. I think that we have this great resource of our county and all of our outdoor activities. And I think people, we are an undiscovered treasure that people are going to discover and fall in love with.
It's more than just the casino. In addition to the casino, we have an indoor family water park that's being built, a new golf course, as well as an entertainment village.
When you lose 500 resorts and thousands of bungalow colonies, it takes 3 or 4 generations to see some level of prosperity. Now they're finally getting a sense of that recovery.
One executive conceded, sure, it's a long shot. It's a gamble. But he quickly noted, any new business is a gamble. Now, after we take a break, I'll be joined by legendary Catskills comedian Freddie Roman and one of the so-called tumblers, Larry Strickler, longtime social director at several Borscht Belt hotels. We'll be right back. Stay with us. This morning, we're looking back. We're touching a bit of nostalgia of the old Catskills mountain resorts and looking to the future with the introduction of casino gambling in the area. I'm pleased now to be joined by 2 longtime friends. Legendary comedian Freddie Roman. He headlined in many of the hotels, and he also started the Broadway production of Catskills on Broadway. Larry Strickler's job in the mountains was to keep everybody moving. He kept them all active. He was a social director at several hotels for 25 years alone at Kutchers. He was otherwise known as the Tumbler. Welcome, guys. So many years later. So what was it that was so magical about the Catskills? And let's find out why it suddenly died. What was so special?
What made it a big success was it was only 90 minutes from New York. And in the summertime, when people lived in apartments and were not air conditioned, it gave them a chance to go away and have a wonderful part of their summer. So they'd go for a week or 2 weeks, or if you were loaded, you went for the whole summer. And the interesting part of the entertainment part of the hotels was that's where so many of America's great stand-up comedians got their start. And I'm talking Buddy Hackett and Alan King and Jackie Mason, and the list goes on forever.
Jerry Seinfeld.
He really was a comedy club guy. Oh. We don't count him as a mountain guy. But really, I mean, Sam Levinson, who was a wonderful television host, got his start in the Catskill Mountains. So many more. And the people, the guests of the hotel. And you had to be funny, because these guests were tough. And you'd go to the Catskills, and you got a different show every night.
How did you keep getting different material? I was at a couple of your shows, and you had them raucous. You had the audiences really responding to you.
Well, because I'm a very good comedian.
I agree. That. But you had to come up with fresh material all the time.
Well, especially, you can get away with it for one summer. But the next summer, you better have fresh material, because they let you know. And the great way the Catskill Mountain guests let you know is, if they didn't care for you, they got up and walked out of the nightclub.
No question about it.
And I'll never forget the Concord. How was the show last night? Oh, 8 doors opened up. You know it was not a terrific show.
So let's hear from the Tumblr. First of all, where's the word Tumblr come from?
Well, it means to make noise, a noisemaker. So I was a noisemaker, but actually the definition is the manufacturer of fun. That's really what I did.
Exactly.
Which is
right.
a very serious job.
And you did it very, very well, Mr.
You're absolutely right, by the way.
Even the point of taking a pie in the face, I think.
Yes, anything to get a laugh. When we talked about entertainment at night, it wasn't entertainment just at night.
No.
It was the whole day.
Very
From the
much
moment
so.
they woke up in the morning. Sometimes you'd have a convention and all of a sudden a trio of musicians would be playing in the hallways. But you manufactured fun all day long, whether it be Simon Says, which was an adult audience participation game, or dance classes.
Simon Says
the biggest.
was the major exercise. Jews would have these meals with 42 courses every meal.
What's funny about that?
And they came out of the dining room and they played Simon Says, which meant don't do this, do this, do this, do this.
Simon Says do this.
That was their exercise.
Right. Would you like to play Simon Says?
Sure. Why not?
Well, you lost just now because Simon didn't ask you the question. Got to ask you.
I
You
fell
got to
for
wait
that
till
one.
Simon.
Okay, Larry, you
But
got me on it.
entertainment was all day, and there was dance classes and music and dancing under the stars before the nightclub opened. It was never-ending entertainment, and even the dining room could be entertainment. There'd be a band in there from time to time.
And dancing around the pool like that. It was
Absolutely.
But you led them all. But Freddie touched upon something. Food. That was always a specialty.
Oh, boy.
I remember, oh my God, the jokes. People would sit there and you couldn't give them enough food for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, and take home with them.
My co-star in Catskills on Broadway, Malzy Lawrence, did this wonderful routine about the food in the Catskill Mountains. And it was an amazing, he's retired now, so I can maybe do, he used to talk about sour cream, waves and waves of sour cream. And it was true. All of that was true.
And see, you can find so much humorous material from the guests themselves. Like you'd have a big heavy-set guest sitting at a table and say to the waiter, I see they have a portion of this. I think we should get a big portion for the table, not for me, but for the table.
That's
so
funny.
many times they would say, we don't want food per portion, but food for the table. Food was a main attraction at these hotels, equal to entertainment.
People sat there for hours. So what happened? Why it was so popular? Why did it go into an economic tailspin?
When you said that, I sighed, because it was sad. But I'm happy that I have these wonderful memories. But a lot of things happened. The first generation that came there were really immigrants, and the next generation assimilated into the regular population. Jews were not really allowed to go to a lot of resorts in this country. There were literally signs that said Gentiles only, and there were worse signs than that.
How about no Jews or dogs allowed?
That's right. And I didn't want to say it, but
Why
that's
not?
absolutely
That
true.
really was true.
It was true. So they had to go here. So
assimilated up in
So
the
they assimilated. The next generation took over. Also, the automobile made it easier to get there. It was a shorter distance.
And the airplane took people away from the New York area.
That's right.
And they could go to Miami, they can go to Puerto Rico, all of the Caribbean, and it gave them another different area to go to.
Right,
And
the
they
same way that the automobile could take them to Atlantic City,
Right.
or to a place and another place. You know, they weren't restricted anymore, and that's what began to happen. Even Atlantic City had a negative effect because there were a lot of conventions in the Catskills. In other words, in the spring, fall, or winter, there could be conventions. Now convention groups were thinking about Atlantic City because of the gambling. So all of these things started creating a decline.
So once the air conditioners were there in the city,
That's
and
correct.
the jets were there to take you to Mexico as cheaply as it could go to the Catskills.
And made a big difference, no question.
And the next generation of owners, the children of the owners, many of them didn't want this job. I call it a job, even though they were the owners, because they had to work literally 7 days a week. They were on call 24 hours. And the next generation, they went, they were sent to college and they went into other things. A few of them stayed. at the Kutchers Country Club.
Concord.
And the Concord. The next generation stayed. But it just was a matter of time.
And it was like going through a time warp as I visited up there just a couple of months ago. It was sad to see what has happened. But let's turn that around, take a break. Let's talk a little more about the past and talk about the future and whether casino gambling is going to really make a difference in the region. Stay with us as we continue our discussion about the Borscht Belt and where did that name come from. We'll be right back. Visiting the Catskills Resort area recently was like traveling through a time warp. So sad seeing the remnants of once magnificent hotels. Let's take another look now. Through the eyes of Carol Laskow and Ian Rosenberg, they produced this film, Welcome to Kutchers, the last Catskills Resort.
Some 90 miles north of the George Washington Bridge lie the Catskill Mountains, alias the Borscht Belt.
People ask me, what is the history of the Catskill? What is its roots? And I answer, it is the third act of Fiddler on the Roof. Tevye wanted to leave the Lower East Side. Well, there were a lot of Tevyes who felt that way.
For generations, this famous resort area has catered in every sense to the New York Jewish community.
There were very few places that were such a social epicenter at a particular time and place that will probably never be replicated again.
Forget Dirty Dancing. It dwarfs compared to the real excitement that was up here.
Your sports commentator drove up to New York's Catskill Mountains to look in on Wilton Chamberlain. He works as a bellhop, this 7'1", 17-year-old giant.
The list of comics out of the Catskill Mountains was huge. Danny Case, Jackie Mason.
Sid Caesar working in our band, Jerry Seinfeld, Paul Reiser, Bill Maher, Billy Crystal.
People were asking for all the amenities. Do you have an indoor pool? Do you have a golf course? Do you have this? They wanted everything, even though I asked many people, do you play golf? No. Do you like swimming? No, but I like to know that you have it.
You need a monument to talk about a glorious history. We served hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in 100 years.
And Kutchers was probably one of the last hotels.
It was.
It survived quite some time.
It was the last.
So it was you in that film there. Yeah. It's like the third act of Fiddler on the Roof. Explain that.
Well, I said if they wanted to do the history of the Catskills, they don't have to start, if they want to do a Broadway show, they could just add a third act to Fiddler on the Roof. In other words, Tevye and most of the family come to Ellis Island. They settle in Lower East Side, and Tevye says, gee, I'm cows, that's what I do, dairy. And so he looks for a place. Well, there are very few places they can go. They're restricted. But in Sullivan County, he could buy some land. And why? Because that land was rotten. No farmer wanted it. That's why.
That's true.
So, Freddie, tell me, Borscht Belt, where'd that come from?
Every hotel had on the menu borscht, either cold borscht or hot borscht. But borscht was a staple of the menu. Whether you liked it or not, it was there for you. And that was a great thing about the dining rooms in the mountains. There were items, 6 appetizers, 5 soups, 7 main courses, and you actually could have every one of them if you wanted to. And many people did.
Oh, those were the days that were incredible. I remember those days. As I said in my earlier report, I worked for a couple of summers when I was going to school as a bellhop at the Raleigh Hotel.
I saw the picture of you in your bellhop uniform.
Oh my God, that was an experience I have to. We were the princes of the city. I mean, the bellhops. We got these beautiful uniforms, and I got in trouble once because I handed back a quarter tip.
Oh, and the boss got mad.
And the boss, George Gilbert, called me and said, "You don't do that." We spent 40 minutes checking in this family with a big steamer trunk with the shoes and everything else. And he said, "Here, boy, here's a quarter." And I said, "Well, thank you. It's on us." He said, "You never do that again." And then there was a time at the Raleigh where the owner, we made a tray, and we were making it up for a guest. Actually, we were making it for ourselves on Passover. And Manny Halbert, who was the owner in the kitchen, said, "Hey, that's not the way to make it. Got to put a napkin on the tray." And my friend and I, Danny, we stood there and watched him build his tray with everything. He said, "You got to give them also a little bit of wine. It's Passover. You got to do this." "Thank you, Mr. Halbert." We lifted the tray and we walked back to one of the cottages in the back and
and
we had
ate it.
ourselves a great dinner instead of having staff dinner.
Perfect.
But as a bellhop, you also know from the singles crowds at these hotels.
Yes, they allowed the bellhops to mingle with the guests. They wanted the bellhops to mingle with the guests. That's another story for another time. Let's hear now about. Let's talk about the future. You have a casino there, and they're hoping this is going to be the rebirth of the Catskills. What do you think?
The truth of the matter is, it's 40 years too late. Had they allowed gambling 40 years ago, there would have been no Atlantic City, no Pennsylvania casinos, no Connecticut casinos, no Massachusetts casinos. The mountains would have held that whole gambling thing to themselves. And even if later on other places had it, the mountains would have established themselves as the gambling mecca. And my gut feeling is this one casino, good luck to them. I hope they do very well. It's not going to be a panacea. It's not going to be exciting like it should have been.
What do you think?
Well, there's also a spa opening as well, a very expensive spa. So there
$250 million spa.
That's correct. So there are two major things there. What is my prediction? I have none. You know, I love when people have an opinion. We'll see. That's what's going to happen.
And he also happens to be a man that loved the mountains with a passion.
True.
That was not known by anybody else. And he would not say anything negative about it at all. That I can tell you.
He had such passion. I visited him at the hotel once and he even had me involved in calisthenics. I wasn't in sync with everyone else.
You look terrific. You were excellent.
You had me doing push-ups the wrong way. I don't know. But there is so many memories in there. If a couple of minutes left, want to share with us what your fondest memory would be of the Catskills?
There was a wonderful comedian who spent most of his life in the Catskills until he got on a show called The Phil Silver Show, You'll Never Get Rich. His name was Mickey Freeman. And Mickey was a wonderful comedian. And he was working at a brand new hotel. And they had just built this brand new, in quotes, casino, which is where the shows were held in. Had nothing to do with gambling. That was their showroom. And he had a second show that night. And he finished his show, walked off the stage, opened the door to get to his car, and fell down 10 feet because they hadn't put a staircase up yet. And he laid there on the ground. The owner came over, he says, "Are you all right?" He says, "Yeah, all right, good, get up, get out."
And you...
With me, there are just so many memories. A combination of things. One, I loved being a social director. I didn't mind, you know, we would have some bad incidents. In 50 some odd years, I lost my temper only 2 times. And those 2 people deserved it. And I was backed up by the owner, which is unusual, for insulting them and really not accepting them.
Wait, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second.
Yes, go ahead.
Larry was the social director also at the Shorefront YMHA in Brooklyn.
Brighton Beach.
And he booked me there. And I finished the show, and I don't remember why this man got mad at me.
There was no real reason.
I heckled him, maybe,
Yes,
or he heckled me. Anyway, the guy came looking for me after the show, and Larry snuck me out the back door, or I wouldn't be sitting here this morning.
Okay, so we're talking now about the future. We've talked about the past. Nice to have a little bit of the nostalgia, but the casino there, they're also building this water park, they're building the spa, so they're hoping it's going to be more, unlike Atlantic City, which is the destination is gambling. Up there, there's more than gambling. You've got the water park, you've got fishing, you got all the other amenities up there.
Yeah.
So there is hope for the future.
I agree totally with you. That's why I don't want to say it's going to fail or be successful. But I believe because of the things you just mentioned, plus tennis and golf and the countryside, when we hear about Atlantic City, you walk 1 block away from the casinos, and it doesn't look very nice.
And it's an hour and a half from the city.
And it's an hour and a half, and it's going to be beautiful. And I think there's a good chance, a real good chance.
They should just hire you as their public relations director.
Do you know the person I can call?
I don't know.
Freddie Roman, Larry Strickler, thank you for going back memory lane with us and taking a look at the crystal ball.
By the way, we have not been up this early in the morning. In the Catskills, you stayed till 12. We didn't have to.
Thank you, Freddie. And that'll do it for our program this week. If you have any comments or wish to see this broadcast again, log on to our website, pix11.com/newscloseup. I'm Marvin Scott. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everyone.